The scent reached the table before the man did. Leather, smoke, winter air, and a cologne with a price tag I could not pronounce. I was cleaning water rings off polished stone at La Volte Noire when the room shifted without anyone saying a word. Conversations paused. Eyes moved. The corner booth became the center of gravity. He slid into the booth like the room belonged to him. Tall, sharp suit, face too calm. A silver dragon wrapped his throat in ink. Two men flanked him, both watchful in the way that says the gun stays under the jacket until the moment it does not. The maitre d' whispered in my ear. Table 12 wants you. His voice had the tone of someone who has learned to obey the ocean. I carried menus and a smile that had paid my rent for a year. We were the kind of place where alder smoke curled under ribeyes and jazz rolled out of hidden speakers like a secret. Politicians came here to shake hands in the dark. Wives came here to forgive. Enforcers came here to celebrate not dying. I kept my head down and my tips up. It was a good system. I stopped by the corner booth. Water first, then menus. The soft hello that says I could be anyone. The man did not look at me. He kept speaking to his lieutenant in Korean with the easy cadence of someone born to it. His voice was velvet wrapped around steel. Look at her. He did not lower his volume, like a mutt waiting under the table. Black girls always learn to wait. The room did not hear it. The air in my lungs did. I set the menu on the table and met his eyes. The staff handbook said never to do that. My blood said different. I said, in Korean thick with the street music of Busan, which one of us is the dog? The fork stopped. The jazz kept playing because the playlist did not know fear. One of his men smirked, then stopped when he heard my accent. The man in the middle leaned back the smallest bit. He took me in properly now, from the ponytail to the scuffed flats. The corner of his mouth moved, not a smile, more like recognition. Name, he said. His Korean turned to clean Chicago English, the kind that hides the lake wind. Amara Reed. He reached into his wallet, peeled off money that would cover my week if I was careful, and placed it on the table like an offering to a god he did not believe in. Then he stood. His shadow got up with him. He looked at me as if he were trying to see a memory through fog. Interesting mistake. Amara Reed. He left. The room exhaled. The maitre d' was at my elbow with eyes like two alarm bells. Office. Now. In the back, Hector's hands shook as he pretended to straighten his tie. You are done for the night. Go home. If anyone asks, you have the flu. Do not walk alone. I stared at the tips in my apron, at the $10 bills that smelled like the hands that had held them. Am I fired? He swallowed. Not yet. But if the owner hears you talking back to J. Ryu in a language he did not expect, there will be a meeting I cannot win. I went home with my keys clenched in my fist, and the voices in my head arguing like old relatives. Stay invisible. The rule had kept me alive since I was 13. But there are insults you swallow and insults you set down on the table between you and the man who threw them, and ask him to pick them back up. My apartment was 4 flights up over a bodega that played bachata until midnight. I locked the door and put a chair under the knob because it made my heart slow. I called Joy, my best friend, and told her a version that did not include the part where the man's eyes looked like winter over the lake. She told me to send my location anyway. I did. I whispered goodnight to a mother who died of cancer when I was a kid, and to a father who was a ghost with 2 names. I fell asleep with my shoes on. They came 2 nights later. A black SUV rolled next to me on Canal when the street had more shadows than people. The passenger window slid down smoothly. The man inside had the posture of someone who respected his chiropractor. Miss Reed, he said, please come with us. If I say no, then tonight becomes less polite. I thought of my father's voice in a language most of Chicago had never heard. Pride is expensive. Know which fight you can win. I got in. They did not blindfold me. Either they were confident or they were careless. He lived high enough that the city looked like a jewelry box. The elevator needed a key to breathe. The doors opened on a penthouse that was all glass and dark wood and money that did not need to brag. He was at the window, hands in his pockets, that dragon ink glimmering where his collar opened. The city's lights made a halo around him that he did not deserve. Thank you, Min, he said, without turning. Leave us. The room emptied. Silence rose to take their places. He finally faced me. Up close, he was younger than I expected, and older than I wanted him to be. The kind of face that had been hit, and had learned to like it. Sit, he said. I stayed standing. I have a shift tomorrow if I still have a job. You do not, he said. But you will not be at work tomorrow anyway. You are kidnapping me. I am keeping you alive. From who? From the people who watched you call me a dog and now wonder if you are important to me. The word people covered rivals, reporters, and men who collect leverage like coins. His eyes did not blink. They want to know if hurting you would hurt me. I prefer not to find out. I crossed my arms to hide the shake in my fingers. I do not belong to you. He considered that like it was a business term. For now, you belong to the safest room I can offer. He gestured toward the hall. There is a bedroom, clothes in your size, a bathroom stocked with more bottles than you have seen in one place. Tell Min what you want. He will get it. Tell me what you know. About what? About how a woman from the south side speaks Busan Korean like my grandmother. The room got small. My father taught me. Your father, he said softly. The syllables careful. Does he have a name? Everyone does. Yours has two. The dead one, and the one you use, I thought. Saying either in this room felt like stepping into traffic. I said nothing. He poured something amber into 2 glasses and pushed one across the counter. Drink. Your hands are shaking. They are not, I said, then watched my own fingers prove me a liar. I took the glass to have something to do with them. The whiskey burned good, and then it burned bad. He watched me drink like it was a test. My name is Jae Ryu, he said, but everyone already told you that. You called me a dog in my mother's tongue. That is either the bravest thing I have seen this year or the most foolish. I do not like mysteries in my city. Amara Reed. I prefer to know where the ghosts live. I met his eyes and tried not to flinch at what lived in them. You insulted me because you thought I could not understand. I understood. I answered. That makes me a person, not a puzzle. It makes you both, he said, which is why you will stay here until I decide which part is more dangerous. I set the glass down so gently that it did not make a sound. You cannot hold me. He shrugged. The doors are locked. The elevator needs my thumbprint. The stairs are guarded by men who do not get bored. You can try to leave. You will not make it to the lobby. His voice did not harden. It did not need to. Also, he said, and the last word waited a conclusion. The people who think you matter now will be looking for you. They are less polite than I am. Why would they think I matter to you? Because you spoke like my first home, he said, as if he had not meant to say it out loud. Because when you said those words, I heard a kitchen in a city an ocean away, and for a moment, I was not a man with a ledger of enemies. I was somebody's grandson. We stood in the kind of quiet that has no oxygen. The city hummed under our feet. Somewhere, a train announced itself and kept going. Tell me about your father, he said. He was a good man. I said, that is not a name. No, I said, and it is all you get. For tonight, he said. Tomorrow we try again. He showed me the room. The bed was large enough to give the word ridiculous a good home. The window glass had the thickness of someone who expected storms. There were dresses in my size already hanging in the closet. Black pants that would fit like a plan. Sweaters softer than apology. I touched a sleeve and felt anger rise like heat from a burner. I do not want your clothes. He nodded toward the door. Then tell Min what to return. He will do it. In this house, you can refuse things. That counts as a kind of power. I laughed, and it sounded like it belonged to another woman. Then give me the choice to leave. He studied me for a moment that lasted a season. Not yet. He left. The lock clicked softly as breath. I stood in the luxurious quiet with my heart hammering and my past walking toward me across the years. I went to the window and pressed my palm to the cold and whispered to the city in Korean, the way my father taught me when the power went out, and we learned to be brave by candlelight. I am still here. The city did not answer. It never does. The answer came in the morning when a man named Min placed a tray by my door with coffee, eggs, and a small note written in neat block letters. You will be asked questions. Answer what you can. Do not lie. He is very good at hearing lies. Also, welcome. I ate because survival is fuel. I showered in a bathroom where hot water never ran out. I put on my own jeans and my own hoodie because I needed to feel like myself. Then I walked back into the room where the man with the dragon waited to make me choose between 2 truths I had never wanted to speak out loud. Min's tray said good morning better than words. Coffee that tasted like a small miracle. Eggs folded into themselves. Toast the color of late summer. I ate until my hands stopped shaking. The penthouse felt different in daylight. Less like a lair, more like a museum where the art had opinions. glass that turned the city into a map, wood that had lived another life as trees in the rain. I found the courage that rides in on caffeine and walked toward the room where the dragon man waited. Jay stood at the stove with sleeves rolled to his forearms, turning a pan with the attention most men reserve for threats. The room smelled like sesame and heat. For a man who ordered the world, he could also cook. "Sit," he said without looking up. "Eat more. You never negotiate on an empty stomach." "I am not negotiating. Everything is a negotiation," he said. "Even silence. Especially silence." He set a bowl in front of me. Kimchi fried rice, an egg on top that blinked gold. It tasted like a story told at a kitchen table at midnight. I hated him a little for knowing what comfort should taste like. "Tell me what I asked last night," he said, and his voice dropped the velvet. "How did you learn a Busan tongue that old women guard like a family jewel?" "My father moved us there when I was 7. He worked with ships, the kind that carry other people's plans. We lived near a market that sold knives sharp enough to become metaphors. I ran errands for a woman who made noodles by hand and thought all American girls were made of television. We came back when I was 12. My mother got sick. I forgot vocabulary for things I did not need in Chicago, and kept the words for weather and grief. Your father's name, Lionel Reed." He waited. Then, as if laying a card down, I added, "He was called Jin by the old men who drank makaoli on the pier. They liked how he said the letter L. They said he made it sound like a small bell. What did he do for the ships? He read numbers that did not want to be read. He carried a notebook with more patience than most priests. He taught me to hear the city and to call it by its name. He taught me to say please to grandmothers and to bow when I did not have the words yet. That is what he did." Jay watched my face and not my hands. He was good at that, seeing where the truth sits behind the eyes. He turned to the window, finally, and let silence show its teeth. When he spoke again, the words were quieter. "There was a ledger in Busan once," he said. "It walked onto a ship and did not walk off. Men lost sleep over that paper. Some men lost breath. Your father's friends might know that story." I put my spoon down. "If you brought me here for a bedtime story about a notebook, send me home. My rent is due in 9 days." He smiled, small and tired. "I brought you here because last night, a man texted me photographs of the alley behind your building. They wanted to know if they should visit. They only ask permission so they can tell their children they are polite. You are here because I said no." He blinked once. "Also, because you called me a dog and a tongue I have not heard spoken like that in 15 years. My phone buzzed inside my hoodie pocket like a trapped bee. I had forgotten it existed. Min stepped from the shadow where all good help lives and held out his palm. I gave him the phone with a reluctance that embarrassed me. He glanced at the screen, then handed it to Jay. Joy's name filled the display. Under it, a photograph. Me asleep on expensive white sheets, dawn trying the glass, a shoulder exposed, the shape of my cheek soft as if I belonged. The photograph had been taken from across the street, through a lens that could see secrets. My stomach turned to ice. Joy's text said only 3 words. "What is this?" Jay handed the phone back to me. "Call her. Speaker. Now." I pressed the green button with a thumb that remembered a different city. Joy picked up on the first ring and breathed fire into the room. "Amara, tell me that is not you. Tell me I am looking at a trick. Tell me you are not in a stranger's bed with Lakeview glass and a target on your back." "I am safe," I said. It was not the full truth, but it was not a lie. I heard the photo rustle in the background like a foil wrapper. "Where are you?" "A safe place. I am coming to get you. Do not," I said. "Too fast. Too sharp. Do not come near my building. Do not answer knocks. If a man in a suit smiles at you, close the door. I will explain when I can. I promise." "Your promises are worth less than bus fare right now," she said, and I heard her inhale like a swimmer about to dive. "Are you alone?" "No." "Is he listening?" "Yes." "Can he hear me if I say unprintable things?" "Yes." "Then tell him this," she said, and her voice settled into the cool of a woman who grew up arguing with city buses. "If a hair on your head falls wrong, if a dish breaks on your floor, if a rumor about her new life lands in any mouth that knows me, I will make sure the police and the press and the aunties and the aldermen all learn your name in the same hour, and I will call your grandmother to tell her I did it." Jay did something that looked like respect. He inclined his head the slightest bit toward the air. "He can hear you," I said. He says nothing, which is loud. I love you, Joy said, and the heat returned to her voice. Use your eyes. Use that mind that cuts. Do not make me bury you. Then she hung up and left the city ringing. Min's phone vibrated in his pocket. He turned, listened, and nodded once. We have movement on the service elevator, he said to Jay. 2 men, no delivery scheduled. One speaks the Gyeongsang dialect into his sleeve. What did he say? I asked. Min looked to Jay. Permission. This is your field, Jay said. She hears what you and I might miss. Min replayed the audio on a small device that looked like a pen. A clipped male voice, rough around the edges. I know that cadence like I know my own feet. He is saying, hold position by the fire door, wait for my knock, and then he uses a word my father taught me not to say in front of anyone's grandmother. They are not our people, I said. The curse bends wrong. Too pretty. Busan tries to spit, and this is theater. Jay's eyes warmed half a degree. Min, wake the house. Camera on the landing. If they knock, we do not answer like owners. We answer like plumbers. Plumbers. No one expects plumbers at this hour, Jay said. Then, to me, you will stay where the walls are thicker. He pointed to a branch of the hallway that looked like a mural of air. Panic room. 10 seconds if you do not hesitate. I did not move. They are listening for footfalls, I said. Hardwood tells on you. Use the carpet. He walked on the rug without looking down. The intercom crackled. A polite voice, the building manager's tone. Maintenance, sir. We need to check a pressure valve on your floor. Not our dialect, I whispered. Lakeshore practice English. The kind that learned from daytime television. Jay glanced at Min. The camera showed 2 men in gray. One held a wrench with brand new shine. The other held nothing and wore a smile that misunderstood architecture. Let them knock, Jay said. The knock arrived, soft as a question you hope will be answered with yes. Jay opened the door to the safety chain and showed them a partial version of himself. Good morning. You must be lost. He gave them a look that an uncle gives a nephew who tried to borrow a car without asking. Valve check, the front man said. Quick look. Show me your work order, Jay said. Printer broke, the man said, and tried to widen his smile. Then you show me your hands, Jay said, and his voice went friendly like a blade well-oiled. Let me see the calluses of a man who works for a living. For a fraction, the corridor stilled. The second man shifted weight to the balls of his feet. Min stepped into view behind Jay like a shadow that had learned to use knives. The camera caught another shape moving at the end of the hallway and froze it with a hiss. Someone else waited by the stairwell, attention leaning forward. They will not break the chain, I said. Too still. Too careful. They want him to open wider. The second breath is the one you have to guard. Jay closed the door as if it had offended him. Min, call down. No one comes up without our invitation. Use the words that make people remember their mother's faces. Min spoke into his radio with a set of sentences that sounded like keys. At the same time, Jay tapped a code into a panel I had not noticed, and I heard a distant bolt slide the way a storm lowers its shoulder. We waited without moving. The men outside did not knock again. The camera at the stairwell showed the third man melt back into the space between light and not light, the way a man does when he intends to return through a different door. I exhaled and realized I had not done that in a full minute. Jay watched the empty hallway a moment longer, then turned to me. That is the first time I have seen fear arrive and not immediately take your hands, he said. It took my hands, I said. I just kept moving anyway. He nodded like a man who knows the price of that sentence. He walked toward the kitchen and poured water like a ceremony. When he handed me the glass, our fingers did not touch. I noticed the restraint in the way you notice the first bird after winter. You will not be going back to your apartment, he said. At least not today. Hector will think you called in sick. The restaurant will survive. You will tell me more about Lionel, and I will tell you a little about Busan that you did not learn at 12. We will try to keep this city at peace long enough to make other plans. Other plans. Food. Work. The next day. He looked down at my hands. Maybe a different job than dodging men with nicknames in dark rooms. You can read numbers that do not want to be read. That is a talent. I hire talent. You think I will work for you. I think we will give each other what the other needs for a while. You need protection. I need someone who can listen through a wall and tell me which word a man avoided saying, And when I am no longer useful, then you will leave. And by then I hope you will not need me, he said. And for a second his voice forgot its armor. I took the glass. I did not drink. The morning had already asked me to learn a new alphabet. I set the water down and said, "If I work for you, I do it with my own name. You do not rename me. You do not own the story." He gave me that small, tired smile again. I do not rename people. I only rename problems. He walked to the window and looked at a city that had tried to bite him, and mostly failed. The sun cleared a bank of cloud, and the river flashed like a knife in good light. Somewhere, on another floor, a door opened and closed with the solidity of a choice made. I turned toward the hall that held the panic room and chose the carpet. The house woke around us, not loud, just certain. I thought of Joy threatening to call a grandmother and decided I would gift that threat to the air every day until I no longer needed to. I thought of my father at a pier in Busan, a notebook in his coat, the sea calling everyone by their true names. All right, I told you this morning. For now, I will stay. The panic room looked like an ordinary linen closet until Min pressed his palm to a panel that did not want to be noticed. The door sighed and revealed walls that hummed with the quiet of generators. There was a bench, water stacked in rows, and a screen that showed the building like a chessboard. The screen glowed a slow pulse at each stairwell and elevator, the way a city artery might appear if mapped by a calm doctor. 10 seconds, Min said, and he did not say, "If you hesitate, it becomes 20. He glanced at me, not quite smiling. "You will not hesitate." I looked at the latch. It had a small scratch, the mark of a man who practices and does not forgive himself for that one careless movement. I filed the detail away. Amara reads the marks other people forget. My father used to say that as if it were a blessing and a warning. Back in the main room, the air felt thinner, as if we had used some of the oxygen on names. Jay had moved to a low table by the window, papers in ordered stacks, a map of the river spread like a patient on an operating tray. He gestured toward a chair. "Sit. We will build something that can walk. You think a map walks, if you read it correctly. Yes." He touched a point along the waterfront. "This pier has cameras. This one has old men who do not sleep. This one has a girl who sells bottled water and notices every shoe that stops near her. If I tell you what I think, you will nod and wonder where I learned it. If you tell me what you hear, I will stop guessing." I let my eyes rest on the river lines, on the finger bones of docks. Somewhere, under those same kinds of lines, my father had counted boxes, leaving one country and arriving in another. Somewhere under them, a ledger had stepped wrong and never made it home. The truth is rarely lost. It is more often hidden by men who believe in mirrors. "Tell me about your rivals," I said. "The ones who pretend to be maintenance at dawn." He looked out at the light, then at the map again. "There is a family that thinks this city would be happier if it spoke only one language. They do business in a boardroom tone, the kind that can call a judge and a florist in the same hour. There is a set of impatient sons under them who prefer shortcuts to culture. The men at the door were neither, which means someone has subcontracted my problem. I do not care for farming out fear. You keep calling it your problem. It is also mine," I said. He accepted the correction with a small incline of his head. "Ours? Then, I would rather not share credit, but I will share danger." Min placed a small notebook on the table and a pen that felt expensive enough to argue with. The paper had the weight of school tests and the smell of ink and discipline. I wrote down the words from the audio in Hangul, the way I learned to hold sound, the curse I had flagged, the way he swallowed the last vowel on valve, the way the second man breathed through his nose as if he had broken it in winter. Min watched the pen dance, and a look crossed his face that he hoped and did not dare to call hope. "You could use a microphone under your desk," I said to Jay without looking up. "Patch it to the same board that controls those cameras. The men who come to test your patience will test it in their own language first, to each other. When they think you are walking to the window, they will tell you what they need if you listen when they think you do not." He glanced at Min. "Order it." He turned back to me. "Tell me about Lionel." My throat lifted an old steel door. He did not ask where he was. He did not ask if he still breathed. He asked for the story under the name. He left work the day before my 12th birthday with a cake in a box and a note in his pocket that said, "Meet me by the cranes." He kissed my head and told me the cake was too sweet. He did not come back. My mother waited a week, then a month, then a year, and finally she waited from the other side of the world, with a bottle of pills on the nightstand, and my hand in hers. That is the version that fits in 3 sentences. The longer version has boats and men with eyes like the seawall, and a woman who sold noodles who cried without noise. The longer version has a ledger that may have held numbers a man should not have carried home. Jay's hands were quiet on the table. Some men build shrines to ghosts, he said. Some men try to turn them into maps. I am sorry for your mother. I am sorry for you. I am not sorry for the men who made a girl older in 1 hour. I could not tell if the apology was practice or real. Most men in his world had a polished kit of sentiments ready in a drawer. This one sounded like something he did not often say out loud. I stood and traced the route from the pier I remembered to the street where we had rented a room with a window too small for a good view. Here, I said, tapping a corner with a black thumbtack stuck through the paper. This is where the old men used to meet and misname baseball teams on purpose, just to make the young boys argue. If we were going to ask questions, that is where Lionel would have begun. Not at a bank, not at a gate, but at a table where foolishness protects the truth. Jay nodded once. We should go. Now. The sooner you return to the world as a person who leaves a building, the less juice the photograph has for men who tell stories. You are safer when you look like a woman who takes a walk with her employer in daylight. We will not dramatize it. We will buy street food and argue about the socks. You will listen for the word that does not belong. I laughed because the picture in my head looked absurd. The man with a dragon on his throat talking about a bullpen. He smiled back, and the room shifted half a degree toward something human. Min handed me a jacket that fit like it had been waiting for my shoulders. He did not offer the clothes hanging in the closet again. He had heard me the first time. We used a service elevator 3 floors down, then swapped to a different bank of mirrors, then stepped into a garage where the air smelled like tires and promises. The car was gray in a way that makes cameras bored. Jay drove. It surprised me. Most men like him prefer other hands at the wheel. He moved through the lanes like a patient river. We did not go to the pier. We went to a market 2 streets over, the place where vendors throw fish with humor and precision, where the woman with the knife makes art of motion, where a child counts change faster than a machine. We bought yakitori from a stall that had a line even in the chill. He paid. I thanked him, and he did not make it a debt. Listen, he said. I did. Merchant cadence, mother tone, joy of a boy who convinced his grandmother to buy him a packet of gummies with a samurai on the front. Under it all, a thin wire of a voice trying not to be noticed. A man talking into a sleeve again, this time in soul diction a little too proper for this street. He said, "He is here with a girl," and the last word carried contempt, as if the speaker had forgotten that girls grow into women who remember. I turned my head as if I were admiring a stack of oranges. The man stood by crates of bok choy, pretending to choose. The knife vendor did not look up, but her blade slowed a fraction. She had clocked him too. Jay chewed and spoke without moving his jaw much. Tell me. Right there. Green cap. White sneakers that are too clean. Slang that learned from dramas, not corners. He is not from here. He will follow us to see where we put me down for the night. He wants a route to sell. We will give him one, Jay said, and the warmth left his voice as if someone had opened a window to January. You will walk with Min. I will take a block that leads nowhere. He will follow me. When he realizes the alley does not love him, we will ask him why he thought today deserved his attention. You cannot take every alley alone, I said. That is how men disappear. He glanced at me, and the corner of his mouth tilted. I do not disappear in alleys, but thank you for the caution. Min ghosted to my side, a shadow in daylight. We turned left, then right, then down a side street where the sun had to work to reach. Jay peeled off like a coin rolling toward a gutter, just enough to tempt the man in the green cap. It worked. The cap turned, the sneakers followed. Jay walked with the easy arrogance of a man who believes corners are his. The cap crossed the invisible line between observation and mistake. We stopped at a door with peeling paint and a brass knob that had known good years. Min pressed. I stepped in, and Jay kept walking. 10 seconds later, a sound reached us. Not quite a shout, not quite a curse. More like the sound a man makes when he meets a problem with his hands. Then silence. Then the sound of someone learning to talk again, with the truth pressing on his ribs. Min gave me a look that said stay, and a hand that said sit. I stood instead, and counting helped. 11 seconds, 15, 20. Footsteps returned, not rushed. Jay came back with a scrape on one knuckle and a calm that bordered on impolite. Our friend wanted to sell a story to the impatient sons, he said. He thought a photograph buys a seat at the table. He has now remembered that some tables do not accept cash. He will go home and think about geography for a while. You heard him. I discouraged him, Jay said. There is a difference. He looked at my hands. Do you need a minute? I needed air that did not smell like knives. I walked back into the market and stood by the stall where a woman was grilling mackerel until its skin sang. She glanced at my face and handed me a slice of pickled daikon without speaking. I ate it like a prayer. When I turned, the knife vendor had slid her blade back into its sheath. You two came together, she said in Korean, and her busan carried old salt. You walked apart, but your shadows stayed near. I like that. Be careful what you say near the river. Men who have never been to the ocean think they can command water. Thank you, I said. She nodded once, then asked in an almost casual tone, Who taught you to make your tongue do that? A man named Lionel, I said. She blinked. Then she smiled in a way that made my knees go soft. The bell still rings, she said. I swallowed anything that wanted to climb from my chest. The bell still rings. The words stepped out of the past like a man who had taken the long way home. I turned toward Jay and Min with a face that would not hold all the new weather. We have to go to the pier, I said. Not tomorrow. Now, someone who knows my father's bell is still ringing just handed me a note in a sentence. If we wait, the tide will take it. Jay did not ask what tide. He looked at the river on the map that lived in his head, then at my hands, then at the city. All right, he said. We go. The river carried the color of pewter and the smell of iron as we came up on the pier. Gulls hung in the wind like scraps of paper that refused to fall. Men in knit caps sat on overturned buckets beside tackle boxes that had seen more summers than some marriages. They argued about baseball with the patience of prayer. Jay parked a block away, a choice that said he did not want our faces on every camera that stared at the river. Min walked ahead and did that quiet head count he always did, mapping exits and tempers. I tucked my hands in my pockets and let the cold keep me present. The old men barely looked up when we reached the rail. One wore a socks jacket with the white script cracked where a shoulder had carried years. Another wore a scarf that might once have been red. Their eyes slid over Jay and rested on me the way elders look at a child who belongs to the neighborhood and does not yet know the rules. I stood close enough to smell the coffee in their paper cups and said, In the soft busan my father taught me for markets and mornings. Weather is working hard today. The man in the socks jacket did not turn his head. The river works harder, he said. His busan held rust and salt. And who taught you to sound like this, girl? A man called Lionel by one city and Jin by another, I said. He used to keep a notebook that remembered what men forgot on purpose. Now they turned. The scarf tilted. The bucket creaked. The man in the socks jacket let a small smile travel across his mouth and stop like a bus at a familiar corner. Jin's girl, he said. You had braids and ran faster than bad news. You shouted down gulls when they looked at your fish. Your mother kept oranges in her bag and told you to eat them when you were angry. He nodded once as if he had finally placed a melody. The bell still rings. My throat closed around everything. Yes, I said. It rings. He watched my face at a time that had nothing to do with clocks. Then he jerked his chin toward the far end of the pier, where a cracked green bench stared across the river at a wall of glass. Bench 3, he said. Lift the back plank. If a nail bites you, it is your fault for forgetting to carry a cloth. You will find something there that belongs to you. We are fishermen, not thieves. Jay did not move. He let me carry the moment. I walked to the bench, sat like a woman resting her legs, and palmed the edge of the back plank. The wood had learned the shape of rain. My fingernails found the lip and eased it up. Underneath lay a narrow space meant for nothing and now holding everything that mattered. A black cloth protected a small tin that once held candy for someone's grandson. I slid it out, pressed the plank down, and kept my hands casual because eyes were on me that I would never see. I brought the tin back to the rail. The men did not reach for it. They watched the river. I opened the lid with the kind of care that belongs at a bedside, and found a key and a folded paper. The key was brass stamped with a number. The paper was in my father's hand. He had a printmaker's block letters and an engineer's reluctance to waste space. Amara, it read. If you are reading, the tide took longer than I hoped and not as long as I feared. Numbers can drown men. Some learn to swim. Go where we had the no-salt noodles that summer when the cranes sang like insects. Ask for the bell. Pay exactly. Do not tell them my name. If you cannot find the room, put the key in your palm and ask the river for a bridge. It will point. My hands forgot how to be still. The old man in the socks jacket laughed without sound. That was Jin, he said. Always 2 doors. Always one joke no one understood until next week. Where is the noodle place? Jay asked in Busan, which sounded like he kept it for a day like this. The man in the scarf answered without looking up. Not far if your feet know what they are doing. He lifted his cup in a toast no one could see and said, Tell the girl to scold the gulls again. It will keep her brave. We left money under a coffee cup because some debts pay themselves. The gulls watched us with coin-bright eyes. As we walked, Min fell into step at my shoulder and Jay kept a half pace behind. A choreography that I knew was not about tenderness but felt like it anyway. The noodle shop was exactly where my father had taught me it would be. Not because the address had stayed the same, but because the light felt right when we turned the last corner. A bell rang when we entered. The kind of sound that makes children behave. Steam rose from pots like folded clouds. A woman with a face like a lighthouse glanced up, saw me, and smiled with the surprise of a person recognizing a song from another life. You got taller, she said in Korean, and your eyes learned the city. She looked at Jay, then at Min, then back at me. You brought tides. I swallowed and nodded toward the chalkboard. 3 bowls, no salt, please, and I would like to buy the bell. She nodded once and disappeared through the curtain. We sat. Jay said nothing. He did not lean back or sprawl or do any of the things men do when they are trying to claim space. He kept his hands folded and watched me read the room. The shop held a dozen stories and a quiet set of rules. The bell hung by the door, brass the size of a fist. Ribbon faded. When the curtain lifted again, the woman carried bowls and a small wooden box. Eat first, she said. Bells tell better stories when you are not hungry. The broth tasted like someone had taken winter apart and put it back together in a way that made sense. The noodles had memory. I ate until the space where fear had been softened. When we finished, she set the box between us and lifted the lid. Inside lay an envelope and a photograph. The photograph was of a pier in Busan at dusk. A man stood with his back to the camera, coat collar up, head tilted as if listening to something no one else could hear. The envelope held a second key, this one smaller, the number stamped sideways. The woman looked at me with a gravity that had nothing to do with years. Your father asked me to keep this until a girl with his eyes asked for the bell, she said. He told me not to give it to a man with impatient hands. He told me not to give it to a woman who believed she owed the city money. He told me to give it to a daughter who still talked to gulls. She smiled. I am giving you what I was told to give. Where does it fit? I asked. A locker under a bridge that has a name but is known to old people by the bakery it used to hide. You will know it when you see the graffiti with a crown that faces the wrong way. She glanced at Jay and chose not to ask questions she had already answered. Pay me for the bowls. The bell is already paid for. Outside, the day had opened its fist. Wind cut along the water the way an honest remark slices a comfortable lie. Min drove now while Jay traced routes on his phone that did not show up on any app. The bridge appeared like a jawbone, girders and teeth, the underside tagged by artists and boys who wanted to be. The crown faced the wrong way exactly as promised. Min parked within sight. Jay scanned the grit and the stanchions. I went to the lockers. They were more like old mail slots. Rust kissed the edges. I used the smaller key. It hesitated the way a door does when you are not sure you should be there, then turned with a sigh. Inside lay a book wrapped in oilcloth and a folded windbreaker that had my father's soap in its weave. The book had a spine that once belonged to something gentle, and now held a ledger that had made men lose breath. My name sat on the first page in the printmaker's hand. If you found this, the note said in English, then either I taught you well, or I taught the wrong people better. Do not trust policemen who drink with men who do not tip. Do not trust men who arrive with flowers and leave with 2 phones. Trust fishermen. Trust women who cook for a living. Trust the boy who watches doors more than faces. Give this to someone who can make numbers speak to judges without losing the meaning in translation. Keep only the names that keep you safe. Burn the rest by the river with your mother's voice in your ear. I am late. That is all I can say. A shadow moved under the bridge, the way grief moves under a quiet day. Min saw it first. Jay felt it in the skin between thought and action. I closed the locker, slid the book under my coat, and stepped back into the light as 2 men rounded a pillar with the confidence of people who think a story is almost theirs. No maintenance smiles. No wrenches this time. Leather coats in the style of men who buy mirrors. One lifted a hand as if we were acquaintances who had argued once about politics and owed each other a drink. "You have something that belongs to a friend of ours," he said in English, polished in a private school. "Let us hold it for him. We will give you a receipt." Jay took one step forward and spoke the kind of calm that does not raise a voice. "You are offering us paper in exchange for a future." "No." The second man's smile thinned. He looked past Jay to me with a curiosity that bordered on rude. Then he said in flawless Busan, "Motherless girl, you are out of your depth." My body went cold and then hot. The insult was old and lazy. The accent was shown. I answered in the market tone that does not waver. "My mother is everywhere I feed myself." "You should be careful with the words you borrow. Sometimes they bite." The man blinked once. Jay did not. Min moved the smallest amount, and the air altered like a stage does when the light changes color. 3 more steps brought 2 more men out of the shadow. They had the look of people who believed they were owed a taste. The book in my coat felt like a pulse. I looked at the river and then at Jay. "You brought plumbers last time," I said. "What is today?" "Gardeners," he said. "We pull what we do not want growing here." Sirens lived somewhere above us in another story. The river made its own sounds. The 4 men took another step. Min shifted, and I saw the line we could not let them cross. "Talk first," I said in Korean, to Jay and to myself. "Make them say who sent them." Men who believe they are close to winning like to tell you the name they work for. Jay inclined his head a fraction. He asked in Korean that tasted like home to me but not to them. "Which house raised you?" The lead man answered in that private school English again. "The one that will eat the city and leave the bones clean." Jay nodded once as if he had shown himself a proof. He smiled, bright and brief, the way a man smiles at a door that finally opens. "Then we will feed the river," he said. The first man reached under his coat. Min was faster than breath. Metal flashed and vanished. A grunt, an oath, the sound of something falling that did not want to fall. Jay moved like water that finds its own level. He drove the second man back without raising a hand high. The third man took a step and saw a future he did not like and stayed where he was. The fourth ran. It was over in the space between a heartbeat and a thought. No shots, no shouts. The river kept its secrets. Min collected what needed collecting and dropped what did not deserve to travel. Jay looked at my coat and at the space where fear had been. He did not reach for me. His eyes asked a question, and I answered it by standing straight. "We go," I said. We went. The ledger under my coat felt like a voice finally finding a microphone. In the car, I opened it just enough to see the first page after my name. Columns, dates, shipments, codes that pretended to be honest. A pattern that my father had taught me to love for the damage it could undo. Jay watched the road and then said, with a steadiness that matched the lines on the page, "We will take this to someone who does not shake when men raise their hands, and we will make sure your father's bell rings in a room with a judge and a flag, and a recorder who hates mistakes." I closed the book and held it, and the bridge passed over us like a benediction. We drove without music. The ledger sat on my lap like a living thing, warm under my coat from the heat I kept losing and regaining. The city slid past, all brick and angles and windows that kept their secrets. Jay's knuckles were a calm white on the wheel. Min watched mirrors the way a chess player watches corners. "Who?" I asked, not bothering to dress it up. "You said someone who does not shake. A woman who hates sloppiness more than she hates men like me," Jay said. Assistant State's Attorney Carla Ramirez. Public corruption and organized crime. She prefers numbers to loud stories. She once dismissed a case because a detective stapled the chain of custody wrong. She is either our shield or our grave. "How do you know her?" I said. He took a light like a man who respects speed cameras. "Everyone knows everyone who matters. We have met on opposite sides of a table with no food. She is fair in a way that hurts. Fair. It used to sound like safety. Lately, it sounded like someone else's rule book. We did not go to the courthouse. If you carry a book, men have bled over. You do not walk it into a building where your face becomes a file. We went to a church basement that hosted AA on Wednesdays and a free legal advice night when the weather turned kind. It smelled like coffee, bleach, and mercy. The receptionist was a retired teacher with a cardigan like armor. She looked at Jay and registered trouble. She looked at me and registered her daughter. She made a call on a landline, as if cell phones had not hired themselves to chaos. 5 minutes later, Carla Ramirez walked in, looking like someone's exhausted aunt and someone else's precise nightmare. Navy slacks, flats that meant business, hair in a twist that had survived a long day. Her eyes did the thing trained eyes do. Full sweep, exits, hands, faces. Why now? Mr. Ryu, she said, not offering a hand. To what do I owe the headache? He did not smile. To a dead man's math. He lifted his chin toward me. This is Amara Reed. The ledger belongs to her father. It belongs to the river too, but for now it is hers. Her gaze moved to me and softened by one tiny click. Miss Reed, what makes you trust this room? My father's handwriting, I said, and set the book on the folding table like an offering. And the fact that I can leave if I want to. Good, she said. That means you are not here because he told you to be. May I? I opened to the first page after my name and stepped back. She did not sit. She stood and read the way a surgeon listens to a heartbeat. 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2, fingers tracing columns without touching. She flipped. She found the legend that was not labeled as such. She exhaled through her nose in a way that meant the picture had come into focus. How long have you had this? She asked. 40 minutes and most of my lifetime, I said. She glanced at Jay. Did you touch it? Enough to save it from men who would misplace it, he said. Did you reorder pages? Add? Or subtract? No, he said. Do you expect consideration in any case that results from this? I expect the men who sent pretenders to my door to find they chose the wrong city, he said. I do not expect your grace. She nodded. Miss Reed, I will need your sworn statement on where this came from, how you retrieved it, and who might have had access before you. We will duplicate, log, and begin verifying entries without taking it from your hands until I can guarantee the chain. I cannot protect you if you appear to be working for him. She jerked her chin at Jay. I am not, I said, and heard my own certainty, and felt the room hear it too. I am working for my father and my mother, and for the girl who watched men call this city by a name that was not its name. Something like a smile ghosted across her mouth and left. Good. We begin now. She turned to the receptionist. Miss Ida, can we have the AA room for 30 minutes? Tell anyone who shows up that the coffee is brewing slowly. Miss Ida looked at Jay like she wanted to make sure his shadow did not stain her carpet. He moved a step back as if that might help. It did. She led us to a smaller room with a circle of chairs and a metal cross on the wall that had seen heavy weather. Carla took out her phone, then thought better of it and slid it back into her bag. Min placed a small Faraday pouch on the table like a magician admitting to a trick. Devices here, he said. She obliged without commentary. We worked with paper like it were 1,987. I wrote. I wrote until my knuckles ached the way they did back in school. When you think speed equals truth. Carla stopped me twice, not to slow me down but to narrow a word. Did you see, or think you saw? Did you hear a dialect or identify a province? Do not give an enemy room. She made 2 calls on the landline. One to a clerk she trusted who promised to open an evidence log after hours without breathing to the wrong set of ears. The second to a forensic accountant named Eunji Choi, who, from the way Carla asked, had pulled entire crimes apart with a pencil and a frown. Eunji said 20 minutes. I pictured a woman who moved like a metronome. When my statement was a tight 2 pages, Carla slid it to me. Read it aloud. I did. Min listened like a wall that learns. Jay watched my mouth move and not the paper. When I finished, Carla signed. I signed. Miss. Ida signed with an old teacher flourish. Carla made 2 copies on a machine that wheezed and soldiered through. She labeled envelopes in block letters that did not apologize. Eunji arrived wearing a raincoat that had more pockets than a magician's vest. She did not waste time with greetings. She looked at the ledger and whispered something to it in Korean, the way a woman blesses a child. Then she pulled out a loop, and the room rearranged around her concentration. Paper stock, she murmured. Ink composition, same pen throughout or calculated variants, impressions on the following pages. She glanced up. Who kept this? Lionel Reed, I said. Jin, some called him. She nodded once as if that answered a question she had not asked out loud. This man loved truth and knew it needed disguises. She closed the book and then reopened it 3 sections forward. Here, she said, tapping a small mark at the corner. He used a peer code, not the labeled berths. The nicknames fishermen use when a storm takes the signage down. She looked at me properly. Who are you to this book? Daughter, I said. And a translator. Good, she said. You will sit with me. We will walk these numbers to the courthouse by morning, or we will at least get them into a room with a lock and a camera and a clerk who thinks commas are sacred. Carla checked her watch. Miss Reed, I cannot put you in witness protection tonight. That machine takes months. I can, however, move this book into my office and move your statement into a judge's sealed hand by dawn. If you leave this room without me, you will do so under the city's oldest rule. What is that? I asked. Do not be the first to speak. It sounded like survival. It sounded like something my father would pin to the fridge. I'll go with you, I said. No, Jay said. The single syllable clean and quiet. They will follow you to follow her. I will carry the noise. Min will carry me. You and Miss Reed will carry the book. Carla weighed the room's math. She nodded. We split. On the way out, miss, Ida pressed a plastic bag into my hands. 2 ham sandwiches, a handful of peppermints, and a prayer folded into a napkin, she said. Eat the peppermints if your stomach forgets its job. We stepped into the rain that had been waiting for a cue. Min took the alley. Jay took the street. Carla led me to a tan sedan that whispered, I do paperwork better than you. Unji slid into the back with the ledger on her lap like a sacred text. The wipers kept time. We did not speak until we hit a light that decided to be red for longer than was polite. Then Carla said, very low, I need you to tell me if any of this touches a uniform. I watched a squad car drift through the cross street 2 blocks up like a shark that forgot lunch. My father once told me corruption doesn't wear a hat. It wears a calendar. Who shows up where? Repeatedly. Dock supervisors. Customs brokers. A sergeant who likes to fish during inspections. The ledger has their initials speaking under other names. If we line up dates with shift rosters, Yoonji cut in, delighted in a controlled way. We can make the river testify, she said. Her pencil zipped. I felt, for the first time since this started, a lift in my chest that wasn't adrenaline. It was a purpose to wear shoes. Headlights flared in the rear view. A black SUV nose-kissed the bumper behind us, and then settled into our lane like a decision. Carla did not look. She changed lanes and took a turn that the navigation never suggests. The SUV followed. 3 more turns. The SUV stayed. The street narrowed to a ribbon between brick. Rain wrote its own language on the windshield. Do not speak first, Carla said again. Then, to me, calmly, Miss, Reed opened the glove box. There is a flare. If they stop us, you drop it under their front tire before they get out. You will not have to be strong. Gravity will help. I opened the glove box. The flare lay there red and rude. My hands were steady. We hit another light that did not want to turn green. The SUV closed the gap a little, hungry without pretending otherwise. Then, from the left, a delivery truck groaned into the intersection like a cow that knows its mass. The SUV had to brake or become a headline. Carla took the chance. She downshifted and cut through a parking lot with a sign that said customers only. The sedan hopped a shallow curb like a horse that hasn't decided whether to compete. We came out on a street lined with trees that hid more than they showed. The SUV, boxed by the truck, lost a beat. It was enough. Carla took a right that looked like a mistake and became a ramp. The freeway opened like a mouth. We did not celebrate. We drove. The city's lights stitched themselves into a blanket around us. When Carla finally spoke, it was to the ledger more than to us. Tomorrow, papers go under seal. The impatient sons will learn what subpoenas feel like. The men who pretend to be maintenance will discover how much elevator cameras remember. Miss Reed, you do not sleep at home or with Mr. Ryu. You sleep at a place whose name never appears in a file. I will arrange it. You will bring your translator's ears and your father's map at 8 a.m. Yes, I said. Jay texted one word to Carla's landline number because that was the only channel she trusted to read on a screen. Clear. He had peeled the SUV away. I didn't ask how. I looked at the ledger on Yoonji's knees and imagined my father on a pier at dusk, head tilted, listening. The bell still rings. I told him under my breath. We're going to make them hear it. Carla did not drive me to a safe house with an official name. She took me to a church school that had closed 2 summers ago, then around the back to a stairwell that smelled like chalk dust and rain. On the 2nd floor, a custodian opened a door with a ring of keys that could have told the city's history. Inside, a classroom had been turned into a plain room with 2 cots, a kettle, a desk, and curtains that did not advertise anyone's life. No names, Carla said. "The custodian is Mr. Lopez. He knows how to keep a door quiet. You will see only me, Miss Ida, and Unji. If a stranger knocks, do nothing. If I am late, eat a sandwich and rest your eyes." She looked at me with a steadiness that made refusal feel childish. 2 days. 3 at most. Then we move again. Yoonji spread the ledger on the desk with the care of a woman unfolding a flag. Her pencil was already sharp. She handed me a second pencil. "You take ports and nicknames," she said. "I will take numbers and invoicing. Leave space for cross-checking. We make a river out of details." We worked. In the hour when night becomes thin, my father's grid opened itself like a door. Some codes pretended to be dates and dates that pretended to be codes. Some initials belonged to men who never thought a book would be found by the daughter of a man they had erased. Twice I stopped. Not because I did not understand, but because the clarity hurt so cleanly I needed to breathe. I touched the windbreaker in the locker and smelled the soap and felt the shape of his arms around me when the power went out, and we made shadows with our hands. Carla returned with a clerk from the courthouse who carried a case file like a newborn. The clerk wore a sweater with little pills of lint and eyes that had seen every kind of impatience. We logged pages in duplicate, we sealed envelopes in triplicate, and we lined a manila folder with simple white truth. The chain of custody looked like boredom. That is how you know it is strong. I texted Joy from the church stairwell on a temporary phone Carla had handed me. 3 words. "Bell still rings." She replied with a flood of caps, and then a simple, "okay," that felt like a hand on my back. "Do not do anything heroic without a witness," she wrote. My throat loosened, and I told her I would try. Just before dawn, Carla stepped aside to check a message on the landline. She came back with weather on her face. "The noodle shop owner called Miss Ida at home," she said. 2 men visited. They asked kind questions about a bell. One put his hand on the counter, as if he wanted to measure it. She told them the girl with the city in her eyes had eaten her noodles and left. Then she rang her bell until their teeth hurt. They decided they needed a different lunch. "They will keep coming," I said. "Yes," Carla said, "but they prefer rooms with mirrors. We are moving them into rooms with paper." She opened her bag and slid a small recorder onto the desk. "From now on, every time we leave this building, it goes into your coat. It does not blink. It just remembers." Around 7, the church woke up to its old habit of morning light. Mr. Lopez appeared with coffee and a bag of pan dulce that tasted like a story about patience. He looked at the ledger only long enough to know it mattered, then turned his attention to the windows and the door, and the kind of small maintenance that keeps fear from finding an easy way in. At 8:20, Jay called Miss Ida's landline. He did not ask for me. He gave a list of numbers that matched license plates and a corner where a sergeant who liked to fish during inspections had stopped to smoke last night. Carla took the message with a pen that did not pause. "Thank you," she said in a voice that made the words sound like ordinary citizen cooperation. She hung up and looked at me. "He understands the line," she said. "He will walk it if we make the line clear." Mid-morning, Yoonji found the page that tied a boardroom name to a dock supervisor with a favorite nephew and a favorite charity. She tapped the entry once. "This is the artery," she said. "If we press here, the impatient sons will scream and call it a heart attack." Carla smiled a little at that, then began to draft subpoenas in a handwriting that could slice fruit. I stepped into the hallway to drink water and close my eyes. The quiet carried children's ghosts, spelling tests, a map with pins, and the memory of chalk on palms. When I opened my eyes, Min stood at the end of the corridor like a figure drawn in soft pencil. He raised his hands to show they were empty and kept his voice at the volume of a person in a library. "Ida called me," he said. "She asked if I would check the block once an hour from a distance. I can do that and stay out of the grown-ups' way. I wanted you to see me once so you would not jump at a shadow." "You walked here," I said. "I took 3 turns no one likes," he said, and smiled with one side of his mouth. "If I were followed, I would not be on this floor." "Does he know you are here?" "He told me not to get in the way of the law. He also told me there is no law against a shadow being polite." He pointed to the stairs. "My office today is a bench behind a tree." "Be careful," I said. "The tree knows me," he said, and was gone. Before lunch, Carla gave me a choice that felt like a test I could pass. "You can read another page, or you can take a short walk with me to a place where people place numbers on screens while old men drink coffee at the back. You will listen for the word that does not belong. You will say nothing. You will be my student intern who likes to wear jeans and asks smart questions in her head." I chose the walk. It felt right to let my body remember that buildings do not own me. We took the stairs in a zigzag that made any memory of our pattern unhelpful. Outside, the air had scrubbed itself. Carla moved like a woman who could buy tea and arrest a man in the time it takes to cross one street. At the corner, a squad car idled. The sergeant at the wheel had the bored face of a man who thinks nothing new can happen in his city. His badge number matched a note in the ledger. He did not look at us. He looked at his phone. 2 blocks down, in a storefront with frosted glass, a check cashing place glowed green like a fish tank. 3 clerks behind glass, 1 man with a hat watching the door, 2 women with kids, a courier counting a bundle with a rubber band. At the back, an old man stirred his coffee with a plastic straw that bent without complaint. Carla bought a money order and asked for a receipt with a straight face. The clerk said a number wrong and corrected it a beat too late. The hat watched me watch nothing. I heard a sentence in a language that wore a nice jacket. The word was crown. It did not belong. Back on the street, Carla wrote crown on her palm with a pen that did not leak. Back to the church. Unji pulled a page and pointed. A small symbol in my father's margin next to a date and a dollar figure. Not a crown drawn like a prince would. A crown flat and plain. The one boys spray under bridges. She grinned. Our man thought he was clever. He taught the book how to whisper the name of a place he loves. My phone trembled in the pocket of my borrowed coat. The temporary number was known to only 3 people. Joy again. I stepped into the stairwell and answered. I am breathing, I said before she could demand it. I know, she said. I felt it. 2 men came to the restaurant and asked Hector for your schedule. He told them you joined a traveling choir. When they called him a liar, he took off his tie and said the music of Our Lady did not require their approval. The line went quiet for a beat. I never liked him more. Tell him I will make him a cinnamon cake when I can stand in a kitchen without counting windows, I said. Also, she said, your landlord says a man came by with cash and a new lease to take your place. He brought a plant for the window. He said he wanted the light. I told him to keep walking. He did not look like a man who likes plants. I closed my eyes, then opened them. The city had a new game. Take the stage away. Fine. I can live anywhere. The bell rings everywhere, I said. I love you. I love you too, she said. Do not let tiredness make your decisions. Eat the food in the bag. We ate the food in the bag. We worked until our pencils got shorter. In the afternoon, Carla left a hand paper to a judge in a room with a painting of a ship. She came back with her face set in a way that meant the door had opened. Subpoenas issued. Seal intact. First set of records to be picked up by a deputy who thinks overtime is an honest word. Somewhere across town, a boardroom got very quiet. Evening pulled itself over the city. Rain ticked on the window. Mr. Lopez checked the hall again and leaned his mop against the wall like a rifle. I stretched my back and stood by the classroom map, the one with county names and small stars where field trips used to go. A text came in on the landline's display from the number Carla had saved for Jay. 1 word. Fine. I read the word 3 times. It meant I am alive. It meant the impatient sons had learned nothing yet today. It meant there would be another walk, another map, another small doorway that might lead to a room with a recorder and a judge. I let that be enough for this hour. When the lights went out across the block for 6 long seconds and then blinked back on, we all looked at the same place at once. The door. Mr. Lopez lifted his keys like a sacrament. Carla looked at the ledger and then at me. 10 seconds, she said, calm as breath. If the next blink lasts longer, we move to the inner room. We will not hesitate. The lights held. The building breathed. Somewhere outside, a siren went north and was minding its own business. Inside, the book waited like a patient old animal, ready to carry more truth in the morning. I made tea that tasted like comfort and thought of my father on a pier in Busan at dusk, listening. The bell still rings, I said to the window, and felt it, steady as a pulse. Morning did not announce itself with trumpets. It came in like a janitor, keys in hand, coffee balanced, ready to make the day work. Mr. Lopez unlocked the door with a small nod. Carla appeared with a folder and the look of someone who had won a point and intends to win the set. Yoonji was already bent over the ledger, pencil shaving curled on a saucer, eyes steady. We began at 8. Carla read us the list like a prayer. Warrants served 3. Subpoenas returned 2. A deputy took a box from the check cashing place and grumbled about parking. The impatient sons had called their lawyers, who had called a judge who did not enjoy being woken before her tea. The sergeant who liked to fish had changed his schedule with suspicious energy. The boardroom had ordered lunch, soup, and sandwiches, with no olives. That last detail made Carla smile. A room that feels safe enough to order lunch will forget to hide the paper trail it creates to feed itself. I took the recorder, slid it into my coat, and memorized the weight. It did not blink. I did not need it to tell me when to be brave. I needed it to remember when I was. By 10, we were ready to step out. Carla sent our clerk and Unji to the courthouse with a pair of boxes labeled in big, tired letters. I stayed with Carla. We walked the long way to the check-cashing place. Rain had washed last night off the sidewalks but left a smell that said the city kept its history on the surface. Inside, the hat from yesterday was gone. New hat, short brim, eyes that habit had taught to clock every shoulder. The clerks looked like they had been visited by a polite storm. The back room was a wound wrapped in tape. Carla asked for a money order. I listened. The word crown did not show up. Instead, I heard a phrase in English that I did not want to belong. Golden Lanes, said the clerk behind the glass, under her breath, more to herself than to us, as if the sound helped her remember which drawer held which form. Golden Lanes did not belong to receipts. Golden Lanes did not belong to bus schedules. It sounded like a street name used by people who liked their metaphors shiny. Back at the church school, Unji was waiting with a small victory. The ledger had a mark I had missed, a pin dot beside 3 separate entries, 2 months apart, all tied to the same birth. She had circled them and drawn a line like a constellation. Birth 12/2 at dusk, she said. Someone uses that corner of the river the way a gambler uses the same chair. If we stand there at sunset, either no one will come and we can stop worrying about ghosts, or someone will come and wish they had never learned to walk on water. Carla nodded. She made a call to a deputy who considered punctuation a friend and asked him to look at the duty roster. If a particular friend of ours shows up by the water at an unusual hour, we will enjoy his company. The deputy said yes, in a way that meant he had already ironed his shirt. Jay texted the landline again through Ida. 1 word. Later. It meant he would be where the river could see him. Min had left a paper cup on the bench in view of the school window, a signal to let us know our shadow was on duty. The cup never moved, but I felt watched over anyway. Safety begins in gestures that look small. We ate the pan dulce Mr. Lopez brought and kept working until the hour between light and dusk. Then Carla said, "It's time. We carry paper and we carry patience. We do not carry anger. That one is heavy and makes you slow." We went in 2 cars. Carla is with me. A plain sedan with Unji and the deputy following at an unconvincing distance. The river had put on its evening coat, steel with silver buttons. Birth 12/2 looked like any other shape of metal and rope until you knew what you were seeing. 2 silhouettes waited near a bollard. The first had the stoop of a man who had chosen favors over paychecks. The second had the posture of a nephew who runs errands for a man who smiles without showing teeth. I listened for the wrong word. Golden Lanes, the nephew said in his drama school whisper. Crown was a test yesterday. Golden Lanes are today. Tell him the table still wants that book. I felt the recorder in my pocket like a small animal with a heartbeat. I felt my father in the part of my chest where his voice lived when the power went out. Carla touched my elbow once. Listening is work. Not moving is also work. She waited, counted a breath, and then nodded to the deputy. He walked across the concrete with the bored face of a man who intended to ask 3 questions and get 6 answers. Evening made the city careless. The sergeant who liked to fish during inspections appeared at the far end of the pier, alone, hat pulled low as if hats could stop math. He saw the deputy and changed course so late that he made his own intent. Carla stopped him with her voice, low and official. "Sergeant," she said, "I need your full name for the record." He gave it because he had been trained to obey when the law speaks in that tone. The nephew took 1 step back. Clever boys always learn to step in the wrong direction first. Jay arrived with the casual stride of a man who was not worried about appearances. He did not greet anyone. He looked at me, then at the water, then at the sergeant, and then at the nephew, and his face did the slow arithmetic of a person deciding which variable mattered most. He chose the river. He put his back to it and gave the deputy room to work. Carla asked the nephew whether he would like to repeat the phrase Golden Lanes for the benefit of the tape. He turned, mouth open, shock flickering. He glanced at the sergeant, then at Jay. He picked wrong. He ran. Min came from where shadows grow and shortened the boy's plan with a single step, and a grip that told the young bones that tonight was not the night for escape. The sergeant tried to make his way into a story where he was a witness. The deputy did not let him. "Badge," he said quietly. The sergeant hesitated, then showed it. The deputy took out a small envelope and offered it like a choice. Carla recorded his name, his badge number, and the fact that he had arrived at an unscheduled visit to a berth named in a federal subpoena. The river licked at the pier legs and kept the secret that it keeps for all of us. Jay did not speak. I did not speak. The nephew spoke plenty. His voice broke twice. He tried to sell his employer a discount that did not exist. He tried to sell Jay as a monster that ate gardens. That last attempt made the deputy blink, then write exactly that phrase, because sometimes a ridiculous sentence shows a jury the size of a lie. We left the pier with a new name and a location that matched a mark in my father's book. The impatient sons had a real address now. The boardroom sat behind glass above a florist. The check-cashing place had been a vestibule, not a vault. Unji drew 3 arrows on a copy of the map and wrote numbers beside them that made Carla whisper, "Thank you," to the ceiling. Back in the church room, Joy sat on a cot with her hands wrapped around a thermos. Miss Ida had let her in after a phone call that contained 2 passwords, one that involved a cinnamon cake and one that involved a bell. Joy stood and hugged only my eyes because she understood the recorder in my pocket and the grammar of this room. "She brought soup," she said. "For when your hands forget they are yours." She looked at Jay without flinching. "Mr. Ryu, if you are going to keep biting lightning, please warn the thunder. I am not washing blood out of my best friend's clothes." He nodded once, not offended, as if he had expected to be scolded by someone's aunt since breakfast. He said to Carla, softly, "You have what you need for tonight." She said, "Almost," and asked him for the license plate of a particular sedan that had passed the pier 3 times with too much interest. He supplied it without checking his phone. Min had memorized it and drawn it on the fogged window of the car with a fingertip. Some men respect paper, some respect glass. Night deepened. Carla sent the deputy off with a cooler of evidence that was only sandwiches to anyone who did not know the weight of paper. Unji stretched her neck and asked for a cup of coffee that tasted like last week's. Mr. Lopez made coffee that tasted like last week's, and it was perfect. Joy told me what the restaurant felt like without my voice, and I told her what the river felt like with my name in it, and we did not cry because there was no privacy for tears. They would come later when I found a bathroom with a mirror that did not judge. Before he left, Jay stood at the window and looked at the courtyard, at the half-court painted for games that had been won and lost by kids who thought summer would last forever. He said, without looking at me, "When this part is over, you will choose your own life. Do not let my world make your choices small. If you want a desk and a schedule, and a houseplant, take them. If you want a map and a pencil, and a bench by the river, take that instead." "What do you want?" I asked. "To keep the impatient sons from teaching this city to speak one language," he said. "To cook for a person who tells me when I use too much salt. To bury a dog someday and cry about it without looking over my shoulder." He blinked once. That is all. He left with Min, who tipped an invisible hat to Joy and got scolded by her eyes for pretending he was a character in a movie. The door shut. The room held the ledger, the pencils, the sandwiches, and the people who had decided to stay awake for a while longer. Carla poured tea that had done its best. She said, "Tomorrow, the boardroom will discover that paperwork can draw blood. Sleep while you can." I lay on the cot and learned the ceiling cracks. They made a map. One crack bent toward the corner, shaped like the river. Another made a loop that could have been a crown if you wanted superstition. I closed my eyes and saw my father's handwriting. "The bell still rings," he had written. It rang in the pier wind, and it rang in the ledger pages, and it rang in my chest. I slept because I had earned an hour, and because sleep is also work. Around 3, a siren passed and did not slow. Around 4, the church furnace shuddered itself awake like an old man who knows he is needed. At 5, my phone vibrated with one word through Ida's number. Ready. We would walk into the morning with a book and a judge and a city that pretended not to watch. We would keep our voices low and our feet sure. We would not speak first. We would let the numbers talk. We would ask the river to remember us kindly. Dawn folded itself into the church school with the polite clatter of keys and the scrape of a chair. Carla arrived in a charcoal suit that had learned how to move fast without losing dignity. Yoonji had already sharpened 2 pencils and drawn a line where our work from last night could begin walking into a courtroom. Mr. Lopez brewed coffee that smelled like a promise kept. We left by the side door in pairs that did not look like pears. Carla and I first, shoulders squared to the wind, my coat heavier by the weight of the recorder and the ledger wrapped in plain paper inside a tote that used to carry library books. 2 blocks behind us, the deputy and Unji were with a rolling case that squeaked once and then thought better of it. Mr. Lopez swept the steps until we were around the corner and then locked the door with a turn that said, "I will be here when you come back." The courthouse was awake in the way only buildings that eat paper for a living can be. Fluorescents hummed. Clerks traded jokes that had survived 3 decades. Security nodded at Carla in a way that suggested respect and boredom in equal parts. We took the stairs. "The elevator is for people who have time," Carla said. We did not. Judge Holcomb sat in chambers with tea that had already cooled and a stack of writs that wanted to be read first. Her silver hair was pinned back with something that looked ornamental and felt like steel. She did not waste words on civility. "Mr. Ryu is not with you," she said to Carla. "He is not," Carla said. "Nor is he needed." "Good," the judge said. "Bring me the book. Bring me the chain." Someone tried to file a motion at 7 to unseal records that do not exist yet. I denied it. I do not enjoy people who try to teach me my job. Carla placed the ledger on her desk the way you place a sleeping child. Unji slid the chain papers forward. I stood with my hands clasped and my breath quiet. The judge read a page, then 2, turned to a second section as if the ledger had spoken in her ear. She asked me to say my name for the record, and then asked if I was in this room by choice. "I am," I said. She nodded, slow and precise, and I realized she had been measuring my voice since we walked in. "Assistant State's Attorney," she said to Carla, "you are requesting sealed orders for records at 3 addresses, a warrant for a birth under surveillance, and permission to impound 2 vehicles that have already been noted in a separate case file. You are also requesting a temporary protective order for Miss Reed while she remains a material witness. Is there anything you wish to add?" "We wish to leave with these in our hands before lunch," Carla said. Holcomb's mouth tilted a degree toward a smile that had seen better days. "Then stop talking," she said, and signed with a pen that looked heavy enough to argue with. When a judge writes her name like that, even the paper straightens its spine. We moved. The deputy peeled off with the impound orders. Unji took the sealed requests to the clerk whose desk looked like the inside of a clock. Carla held the warrant like a confession no one else had heard yet. I followed, feeling the ledger in my tote and my father in my chest. In the hallway, a man in a suit that tried too hard stood too still. He was the boardroom's idea of unremarkable. He watched the elevator doors and the stairwell at the same time. His eyes slid over us and then returned as if we had reminded him of a bill he did not want to pay. Carla did not break stride. "Do not be the first to speak," she said without moving her mouth, and it landed in the space between my shoulder blades where my father used to rest his hand in a crowd. Outside again, the sky had chosen a clean gray. Carla's phone buzzed with a message from Ida relayed through a route that did not leave prints. The noodle shop owner had 2 visitors again. She sold them tea and kept their cups. She said the cups like to talk when you warm them the second time. Carla smiled at that, and I understood why she trusted Ida's network. It valued the humble details that make good cases and good soup. We stopped in the plaza across from the florist that hid a boardroom above it. Unji joined us with a map that looked like a child's drawing of a treasure hunt. "Here is the service entrance," she said. "Here is the hallway with a camera that no one notices because the florist keeps a poster of wedding bouquets beside it. Here is the door with a deadbolt that is only for show. Here is the pantry where the impatient sons store the bottles they do not drink in public. If they move the paper, it will touch this path." A city truck hissed to a stop at the curb. The deputy stepped out in a jacket that made him look like a man who fixes leaky roofs. He opened the back and pulled a dolly. He waited for Carla's nod. She gave it, and the building swallowed him whole. We did not charge in. We watched the reflections in the glass. We listened to the florist sell seasons in cellophane. We waited in the way hunters wait when they are tired of the idea of hunting and only want to go home with something that makes sense of the day. Inside, small changes revealed themselves. A young man in a tie who had learned fear walked to the back with a folder pressed to his ribs. A woman who usually checks her phone every 5 minutes did not. The air inside the florist's thickened. When the deputy reappeared, he did not nod. He pushed the dolly with a banker's box that had been labeled with the careful hand of a person who thought labels could save him from consequence. We took our box and left. Carla did not look back. That is the rule. You do not look back at a place you just turned inside out. You let it learn how to be itself again. At noon, a different judge signed the protective order for me with a stroke that looked like a warning. Carla handed me a copy with the care of a person laying down a placemat. "It does not make you untouchable," she said. "It makes anyone who touches you easier to punish. There is a difference." We ate sandwiches on a bench where pigeons held their small conventions. Joy texted a picture of Hector's cinnamon cake attempt. It had collapsed in the middle and looked like a gentle crater. "He says to tell you he is very proud of the crater, and that it tastes like defiance," she wrote. I sent back a heart and then another because 2 felt like the correct number. The afternoon belonged to paper. Unji and Carla began to read the first box with a rhythm that reminded me of the way good partners dance when the song is steady. I copied names into a column, and then copied those names again next to initials in my father's ledger. The shape of a net, finally revealing what it held. Twice, we found a check folded into a folder where it did not belong. Twice, Carla's mouth made that small shape that means thank you without sound. Near 4, Ida called. Her voice carried urgency wrapped in calm. The noodle shop owner rang the bell twice and sent a boy to say this. 2 soft men with hard shoes are asking the fisherman about a bench and a candy tin. They are not from here. The boy says. One of them smiles with only half his face. She says to remind the girl that gulls do not like men who walk like that. Carla and I looked at each other and did not need more words. We took the back stairs 2 at a time, took a street no one loves because it is honest about its potholes, and reached the pier as the river began to put on evening. The old men were absent by design. Fishermen know when to keep company and when to let the wind sit on the bucket. The 2 men stood at bench 3 as if it owed them royalties. They had the coat and shoe profile Ida had promised. One tapped the back plank with a finger as if he could summon history by knocking. The other watched the parking lot with the hyper-attention of a man who has never noticed a gull unless it stole his lunch. I felt the recorder against my ribs. I felt the note in my tote. I felt my father somewhere under the surface, laughing the way he did when a plan revealed its simple face. Carla did not walk straight. She curved like a person going to admire the view from the far end of the pier and let the wind tangle her hair. I drifted toward the rail with the posture of someone taking a call she did not intend to answer. The men argued in a language that borrowed phrases from a dozen neighborhoods and belonged to none. One said crown again as if saying it made him smarter. The other said golden lanes like a password to a door that kept refusing him. The deputy appeared from the ladder that dropped to the lower planks. He came up fast and quiet and held his badge where the wind could read it. "Gentlemen," he said, and the word carried a weight that made it mean the opposite. They went still. He asked their names, and they gave false ones with the fluency of practice. Carla walked back with a pleasant face, and a recorder in plain sight now. She asked whether they would like to explain why they were testing city property for loose planks. The one with the half-smile smiled his half and said, "This pier belongs to no one." He was wrong, and he looked wrong saying it. "The city belongs to whoever shows up with a ledger and a judge," Carla said. The wind filed that sentence where the wind keeps its small joys. We left them to the deputy and his patience. On the way back to the school, Jay texted Ida one word. North. It meant the impatient sons were moving something through a rail yard above the river where the tracks curve like a question. Carla changed course without consulting a map. Unji met us at an underpass with papers that had already been signed because she knew Holcomb would rather sign 10 prudent risks than 1 apology. The rail yard was a grid and a maze and a hymn to American stubbornness. Men in vests moved with the heavy grace of people who handle tonnage without drama. A container with a crown tag sat where crowns did not belong. 2 sedans watched from opposite corners. Their occupants had the slump of bad posture learned from easy victories. Jay was not visible, which told me where to look. You never see the person who is doing the work if they are any good. Carla and the deputy presented the paper to a yard boss with a voice like gravel and a gaze like a level. He read, nodded, spat neatly, and blew a whistle that cut the afternoon into before and after. The container left its bed with a jerk that made the watching men wince. The inspector cracked the seal as if he were opening a stubborn jar in front of the company, and if I had not already been holding my breath, I would have done it then. Inside were boxes labeled with items that do not warrant this sort of secrecy. Under them, another layer, and under that, a ledger of a different kind, a list of payments that matched the sums in my father's book. So exactly that for a moment I saw his hand over this page too. The impatient sons did not show. They sent boys and cousins and accountants without courage. The deputy collected names. Carla collected the paper. Unji collected the details that turned into diagrams. I collected the feeling in my chest that might have been triumph and might have been grief, saying, "See, I told you it mattered to pay attention." Back at the school, night arrived with purpose. Joy reheated the soup and told me that Hector's crater cake had sold out because a rumor made it taste better. Ida wrote 3 messages in careful script and handed them to Carla as if passing short prayers down a pew. Mr. Lopez set a chair under the doorknob, not because it would stop anyone, but because it would slow them 5 seconds. And 5 seconds is often the difference between a bruise and a scar. We spread today's paper on the desks and drew lines with pencils that were shorter than this morning. The city felt like a body learning to breathe through a broken rib, painful and hopeful at once. Carla said the word tomorrow like a plan. Unji said the word audit like a promise. I said the words, the bell still rings like a fact, and felt the ledger under my hand answer in its quiet way. The city woke like a courtroom, lights on, pens ready. Carla moved boxes the way a conductor moves a score. Unji drew arrows in small circles, and the page began to speak. The deputy served papers without telling his shoes to make noise. By noon, 3 offices above the florist smelled like fear and toner. I swore my statement with a glass of water and a straight back. The defense tried to paint me as a waitress borrowed by a man with a dragon on his throat. Carla let them try, then said 2 words that changed the air. Independent witness. She walked the judge through the ledger like a map. Peer names, dates, nicknames that only fishermen use when signs fall. She showed recordings of boys trying to say crown like a password. She showed the rail yard entries and the second book from the container. And when she said the numbers landed in the same place, the judge leaned forward. At dusk, the grand jury heard the bell without knowing it. The noodle shop owner gave cups to an analyst who warmed them and found fingerprints layered like rings in a tree. The old men at the pier spoke in that careful Busan that claims you only if you earn it. The sergeant who liked to fish forgot his schedule under oath, then remembered it when shown his own messages. The impatient sons sat in a row with eyes that learned humility late. If you listened closely, you could hear calculators crying. I saw Jay only once that day. In a corridor that smelled like dust and aftershave, he stood by a window and watched buses pull away. He did not step toward me. He lifted his chin a quarter inch, a greeting that lets a woman choose. I nodded and kept walking. We were careful with each other. We would be until the city stopped needing us to be careful. Joy celebrated my testimony with a crater cake and a speech that made Hector wipe his eyes with his tie. Mr. Lopez taped a small printout on the classroom door. Please knock as if someone is sleeping. Ida came late with a packet of names written in that neat hand. One of her cousins at the florist had taken joy in labeling banker boxes, and joy is something you can trust. Just before midnight, Yoonji found an index card in a hidden pocket at the back of the ledger, paper cut thinner than a whisper. My father's hand again. If this surfaces, it means you are braver than the night that took me. The bell is not a thing. It is a practice. Ring it for yourself first. Tell the girl with the lighthouse face that I never stopped listening. Under the words, there was a name. Not a kingpin, not a son. A man in a suit who had hidden behind everyone else's swagger. A quiet treasurer who liked single-origin coffee and private clubs. The kind that never expects his name to show up where working people tell the truth. Carla smiled like a storm when she read it. She made a call with the patience of a woman who knows this kind of man hates waiting. A deputy woke him at dawn, while he practiced smirking in a mirror. The mirror had nothing to say. Part 10. The next week looked like justice, learning to tie its shoes. Pleas arrived, heavy and fast. The boardroom's treasurer folded first. He traded his view for a cell, and his cufflinks for a number. The impatient sons discovered that juries do not love boys who call plumbers at midnight and lie to fishermen at noon. The sergeant retired with a salute that felt brittle, and a charge that did not. A clerk from the check-cashing place cried when she saw her own initials in the ledger, then told the truth and slept for the first time in months. Judge Holcomb thanked the river on the record without saying the word river. She thanked the careful chain. She thanked the ledger. She thanked the citizens who do not show up in headlines. She signed a restitution order that made a florist's rent safe and a market vendor smile into her knife. She signed the protective order with the same pen and looked straight at me. Miss, read, she said. You rang the bell and you kept ringing it. That belongs to you, not to any man nearby. When it was over enough to name, we met at the pier. The socks jacket man sat like always. Bucket, coffee, wind for company. The noodle shop owner came with a thermos and a grin. Joy wore a scarf so bright even gulls blinked. Min leaned on the rail with the posture of someone who had finally slept. Jay arrived last with a takeout bag and a silence that fit the weather. We ate steamed buns from paper and said small things about clouds and season tickets. The old man tapped the green bench. "The plank still lifts," he said, "but there is nothing to hide now. Only splinters and old gum." "Good. Secrets grow mold." Jay pressed the small brass bell into my hand. The noodle shop owner nodded. "It is yours," she said. "It brought you back to yourself. Keep it where you can reach it." I asked them about the night my father did not come home. No one dramatized it. A squall rolled in, a ledger moved from one set of hands to another, and a man decided his daughter would need a map more than she would need an apology. The pier remembered. The sea kept the part that belonged to it. The rest reached me in time. Later, in the quiet of the penthouse kitchen where the city looked like a jewelry box again, Jay cooked kimchi fried rice and set a perfect egg on top, then handed me a spoon. He did not ask for my next step. He told me his. "I am opening a second gym," he said. "Same river, different block. Kids who can count combinations can also learn to count numbers that matter. No mirrors, plenty of notebooks." I told him mine. Carla asked me to consult on patterns that do not want to be seen. I said yes for a season. After that, I will build a small studio with joy. Forms people do not abandon. Stories people can read without fear. Maybe a website for a fisherman who sells coffee in paper cups and wisdom in 2 sentences. He smiled the small, tired smile that first made this whole thing feel human. "I will cook when you work late," he said. "You will tell me when the salt is wrong. We will talk like citizens. We will keep the doors loose on the hinges so friends can walk in carrying soup. If the city wakes up angry, we will let her talk, and then we will take a walk until she forgets herself." I slept at home that night, in a new place with windows that held no old arguments. I put the brass bell on the kitchen shelf beside a jar of cinnamon and a photograph of my mother at a picnic. I opened the window and let the city talk. It did not sound like danger. It sounded like buses, like someone practicing a trumpet, like a couple arguing about nothing important on a balcony, and then laughing. I set the ledger in a box that would live at the courthouse, then touched the cover one last time. In the morning, I ran along the river. It smelled like iron and clean weather. At the footbridge where I used to count my fear, I stopped and looked across the water toward a city with more languages than any one man can hold. Jay came up beside me, not too close, not too far. He looked better without a shadow on him. We stood there with coffee and quiet, 2 people who had spent days being careful, and who now could decide to be ordinary. I thought about Lionel Reed, gin to the old men with patience, a father who taught me to speak storms in kitchens. I thought about my first words to a man who mistook me for a dog, and how those words had become a road that led me back to myself. I thought about Joy and Ida and Mr. Lopez and Unji and Carla, about a judge with a steel hairpin, about a city that had tried to teach me to lower my eyes and had learned to raise its own. When we walked home, I rang the bell on the shelf. It was a small sound, bright and sure. It did not ask permission. It did not apologize for being loud enough to hear. It simply rang, again and again, steady as breath, proof that the life I chose is mine.